So today's topic is the apparent regressive left and its unquestioning defense of Islam. It's a topic I've seen raised a lot, both on my channel and in the secular community in general. For those of you lucky enough not to have come across said claim, pretty much it asserts that one cannot criticize Islam without being labelled as racist as part of some coordinated effort supposedly hosted by at least a sizable segment, if not all, of the left. That last bit depends on who's making the accusation. Note, I'm not on about whataboutism, which typically involves Christian apologists asking why I don't criticize Islam, and Muslim apologists asking why I don't criticize Christianity, both ignoring the fact I have libraries of content doing just those things. I am solely discussing the claim that if one criticizes Islam, the left in general will descend upon you like a plague of locusts, accusing you of being a racist or Islamophobic. This has become a very popular talking point with the right. Oh, I'm sorry, centrist or classical liberal voices, because apparently they can't respect a person's core identity, but refer to their political stance on the basis of their views and their actual actions, and they'll rage harder than an incel at a lesbian bar. Recently, I was even accused of being a regressive lefty by Nightmare Fuel, only to put him in his place, noting the fact that at the time of said conversation, I had 96 videos critiquing Islam. But before we begin, let's define some terms. Islam, a faith-based doctrine centered around the Prophet Muhammad, the writings of the Quran, and its proposed deity. Muslim, a self-declared adherent of the aforementioned faith. Islamophobia, a phenomenon in which one equates Islam with certain racial or ethnic traits to promote irrational fear, hatred and aversion to all people who share said racial and ethnic traits, irrespective of whether they are Muslim or not. That's right, Islamophobia does exist and said term has actual usage. Now, race doesn't exist at a genetic level. The closest we have is ethnicity, which refers to a shared cultural and migratory heritage, which is often falsely equated with race. But the perception of race most certainly exists, and so does the equation of Islam being such a race. That's why post 9/11, both Hindus and Sikhs from places such as India were also targeted in various hate crimes. The same is true for the treatment of various ex-Muslims. Yes, the term Islamophobia can be abused, as with any term. That abuse, however, does not remove the functional usage of said word in certain situations. Do note that attacks reported as being Islamophobic rarely begin with, and the culprit approaches the victim and asks them their religious beliefs. Normally the culprit targets them due to the melanin content of their skin or their style of dress. We also see this in the whole close the borders narrative, which can be a death sentence for ex-Muslims seeking asylum. Who are they seeking asylum from? Well, Islam. So if I acknowledge that fact, why on earth am I here talking about how Islamophobia is a legitimate issue in certain contexts? Well, because whilst organised Islam with a strong political hold is tyrannical, just as with every religion, the vast majority of believers don't give a shit. Most Muslims don't differ in the slightest compared to Christians in that they have no clue as to what's written in the Quran. Sure, they learn how to recite it, but they do so through tune and rhythm, and many of those that have read it and taken time to understand it use all the same excuses and tactics that Christians have for decades. Yes, the Quran describes the rape of female slaves taken as the spoils of war as being permissible, but the Bible describes it in great detail, noting how many days one must wait before she can be raped. Now, as someone who's both a secularist, a feminist, a humanist, and not forgetting a survivor of childhood rape, I'm not about to give said books a free pass because they have cultural significance. I will critique these books, I will critique their preachers, and I will indeed critique the followers who tick I agree without bothering to study what it is they're signing away on. But the focus of that last part is not abusing people on the basis of what the religion most of them were raised into says, but rather letting them know what it says in hopes that the part of them which houses their moral integrity will reject said moral dictates like a body fighting a virus. Because that's how I see religion, a virus which has overtaken the body, and if there's one thing they teach you at med school, it's that you don't save your patient by abusing them. Or so I've been led to believe. Either way, Christians of European descent are no better at ignoring their harmful religious bullshit than Muslims of Middle Eastern descent, and the pretense otherwise is stooped in racial hatred. Now, I have clear animosity towards the religion of Islam, and for arguably good reason. I'd say better than many in fact. But what I'm not going to do is then turn that animosity and use it to argue, as an example, that all Muslims are rapists and we should therefore close our borders to stop them getting in. That, as with many of the other right-wing talking points such as white genocide, which really does reveal the racist origins of said myths, is just utter bollocks. Yes, the Quran can be said to be part of rape culture, and the indifference shown by adherents of said faith a major problem that needs to be called out. But to take that genuine critique and turn it into all Muslims are rapists, which you know will be followed immediately by racist claims of brown-skinned men coming over to rape our white women, is to turn an actual critique into racist garbage. They are not the same, yet the accusation of the so-called regressive left, as it is most often used, is designed to make it appear otherwise. Now, are there people who blindly defend Islam under the misguided notion of protecting its adherents? Yes, I've spent too long in my line of work to doubt that such people do exist. There are those who hold to some romanticised and often patronising bottled perspective of Islam. It's a sad fact of both colonial atrocity and faith capitalism. We see the exact same notions of exoticism being applied to all Eastern religions. However, to assert that this is a frequent occurrence on the left to the point that it's crippling open discussion seems to lack basis. Whilst I'm only a relatively small content creator, I do have a lot of content covering Islam, and the only times I ever get called out for Islamophobia is when Muslims are posting themselves. This often comes in the form of whataboutism, as mentioned earlier, stating that if I weren't racist, then I'd also be responding to Christians. As I do. I can think of maybe a couple of instances in my entire time working in the field where I had someone who was not outwardly a Muslim telling me that my criticism was Islamophobic. It's a rarity to have someone express it in such words or even similar. What I have had to deal with countless times, however, are the people on the right turning every genuine discussion about the issues inherent with the Quran and the Islamic faith into their personal soapbox about the regressive left. Yes, I know people in positions of power have made the wrong calls in certain situations. That often happens when two minority groups find themselves at odds on a certain topic, and the person making the decision lacks decent knowledge of both groups and their arguments. But to equate the complexity of the situation and failures in a few instances as some organised coalition on the left is disingenuous. When a university pulls a talk hosted by an ex-Muslim group on the decision of a single faculty administrator or a small group of student electees, that is not the coordinated effort of large portions of the left, as the right likes to pretend. There is indeed a real issue that needs immediate addressing, and the best way to go about that is to explain the great levels of social hostility apostates face in order to express why having such a conversation is key to the maintained well-being of said people. What should not be done, however, is to conflate these few genuine issues with the times where certain white nationalist speakers were pulled because of specific things they said as a means to spread and promote hatred on the basis of perceived race. Sadly, that's what I see happening time and time again. Someone, political alignment undisclosed since that's usually the case, makes a bad call. The right then comes along and pretends like that means all calls ever made by every administrator everywhere are equally bad. Now this just isn't true. So in my own perspective, the so-called regressive left is just another right-wing dog whistle, one which we do good to bury along with the rest of the crap they put out. The irony is that the people who use said term often complain about Islamophobia. The difference is that term has at least some degree of handiness when defined in a proper and nuanced fashion, just like any word or phrase. The so-called regressive left, meanwhile, does not. It's a term which is predicated on the user having knowledge that they lack, such as the political affiliation of people making certain calls, as well as why. When a platform decides to pull something, normally money is involved as a deciding factor more than anything else. And yes, a part of that picture is the bad press and financial boycotting which has been cultivated by left-wing culture of accountability. But sacrificing one's moral and ideological integrity to preserve profit is, if nothing else, an economically right-wing move, one that holds profit above all else. It also makes claims about the left and so-called social justice warriors which don't seem to ring true, at least from my exposure to said community. I'm about as social justice warrior as they come. Hell, I have content warnings and everything. And a growing portion of my audience is much the same, and yet, oddly enough, I find myself being harassed by accusations of regressive leftism far more than I have ever been charged of Islamophobia by someone who wasn't trying to protect their personal religious faith. And it may differ for other people in different circles, but for something that's supposed to be so pervasive, that at least can be cut down as lacking any relation to reality. Or at least those are my thoughts, ones I'm happy to finally put into words and put out there for you lot. And to anyone who finds themselves disappointed by what I've said, why? Nothing's changed. These have been my views for the past several years. I just got motivated into finally doing something after seeing racist man-children argue that people acknowledging how Western violence in the Middle East did nothing but worsen the situation as a whole is apparently the secular community being infatuated with Islam. Because apparently facts over feels doesn't apply to their far-right gun boners. Hi there, I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, Alexia Richardson, John Schoenrock, Alexander Williams, and Daniel Martinez. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years and really is the only thing that manages to keep the channel afloat. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence of Thought on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity, or ability, both mental and physical, will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you.